The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training camp as Sarah Martinez stepped off the transport truck. At 19, she was smaller than most of the male recruits around her, but her eyes held a determination that had carried her through 3 states to reach this place. The year was 1943, and the world was at war. "Line up, maggots!" Sergeant Wilson's voice boomed across the dusty ground. Sarah took her place among the 30 other recruits, most of whom towered over her petite frame. She could feel their curious glances and hear the whispered comments about the girl who thought she could be a soldier. The first week of basic training was brutal. Sarah pushed herself through every exercise, every drill, every challenge thrown her way. While others complained about the early morning runs, she was already awake, practicing her marksmanship with an imaginary rifle. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was just 7 years old on their farm in Montana, and she had been hitting targets that grown men missed ever since. During weapons training, the moment Sarah had been waiting for finally arrived. Sergeant Wilson announced that each recruit would be assigned their service rifle and begin marksmanship training. Sarah's heart raced as she approached the weapons table, her hands steady despite her excitement. "I'd like to request a sniper rifle, sir," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet group. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, like a dam breaking, laughter erupted from every direction. The male recruits doubled over, slapping each other on the back as if Sarah had just told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. "A sniper rifle?" Private Johnson gasped between laughs. "Sweetheart, you can barely see over the standard rifle's sight. Maybe she wants to use it as a walking stick," another recruit called out, causing fresh waves of laughter. Even some of the junior officers couldn't hide their smirks. Sergeant Wilson's face reddened. Whether from embarrassment or anger, Sarah couldn't tell. "Martinez," Wilson barked, "you'll take a standard M1 Garand like everyone else. And maybe focus on learning to march in step before you start fantasizing about being some kind of war hero." Sarah's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she kept her chin up. "Yes, sir," she replied quietly, accepting the standard rifle. The weight felt foreign in her hands after years of using her father's custom hunting rifle. That evening, as she sat alone in the mess hall, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was meant for something more than what these people could see. The other recruits continued to treat her like a curiosity, a girl playing soldier who would wash out within a month. "Don't let them get to you, kid." Sarah looked up to see Corporal Davis, one of the few instructors who hadn't laughed at her earlier. He was an older man with kind eyes and scars that spoke of real combat experience. "They laughed at me too, you know," he said, sitting down across from her. "Different reason, but the result was the same. Thought I was too old, too slow. Took me 3 years to prove them wrong." "How did you do it?" Sarah asked. Davis smiled. "By being so good at what I did that they couldn't ignore me anymore. But first, I had to figure out what I was truly good at." "What's your story, Martinez? What makes you think you belong here?" Sarah hesitated, then told him about growing up on the farm, about her father teaching her to shoot, about consistently outperforming every hunter and marksman in her county. She told him about her older brother who had died at Pearl Harbor and her burning desire to serve her country in his honor. "My father always said I had a gift," she finished quietly. "But maybe gifts don't matter here." "Oh, they matter," Davis said seriously. "But sometimes it takes the right person to recognize them. Keep your head up, Martinez. This war is going to need every talented person it can get, regardless of what package they come in." That night, Sarah lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling. Around her, the other recruits snored and mumbled in their sleep. She thought about her brother Tommy, about the promises she had made at his funeral, about the rifle request that had made her the laughingstock of the entire camp. She didn't know it yet, but word of the small recruit who had requested a sniper rifle was already making its way up the chain of command. In a war that was consuming young men faster than they could be trained, the military was beginning to look for talent in unexpected places. 3 bunks over, Private Richardson whispered to his bunkmate, "You think she can actually shoot?" "Who cares?" came the reply. "She'll be gone within a week. Girls don't belong in combat." But Sarah Martinez was not planning to go anywhere. She had come too far and sacrificed too much to give up now. Tomorrow, she would show them exactly what a farm girl from Montana could do with a rifle in her hands. As sleep finally took her, Sarah dreamed of her father's voice. Straight back, steady breathing, gentle squeeze. The rifle is just an extension of yourself, Sarah. Trust it, and it will never let you down. She had no way of knowing that within 2 weeks, those very skills would catch the attention of a general who had spent his entire career looking for soldiers exactly like her. The shooting range was alive with the sharp crack of rifle fire as the recruits began their first formal marksmanship test. Sarah stood at position 15, her assigned M1 Garand feeling awkward in her grip. The rifle was heavier than what she was used to, and the sights were different from her father's hunting rifle back home. 2 minutes per round, 5 shots total, Sergeant Wilson announced. Anyone who can't hit the broadside of a barn can expect to spend extra time here until they get it right. Sarah took her stance, feeling the familiar calm that had always come over her when she held a rifle. She blocked out the sound around her, the nervous chatter, the occasional curse when someone missed their target completely. This was her element. Her first shot rang out clean and true. She didn't need to wait for the range officer's call to know it was a bullseye. The second followed quickly, then the third. By her fourth shot, she noticed the shooting positions around her had gone quiet. "What the hell?" she heard Private Johnson mutter from the next position. Sarah's fifth shot completed a tight grouping in the center of her target that would have impressed a seasoned marksman. She set down her rifle and waited for the official scoring, though she already knew what it would be. "Martinez!" Sergeant Wilson's voice boomed across the range. Front and center. Sarah jogged to where Wilson stood with the target's scoring sheets, expecting another lecture about knowing her place. Instead, she found him staring at her target results with a confused expression. "This your first time shooting this rifle, Martinez?" he asked. "Yes, sir. First time shooting any military rifle." Wilson held up her target. 5 shots, 5 bullseyes grouped so tightly they could have been covered by a quarter. Around them, the other recruits had stopped their own shooting to listen. "You telling me this is beginner's luck?" Wilson's voice had lost its harsh edge. "No, sir. My father taught me to shoot when I was 7. Been hunting and target shooting ever since." For the first time since Sarah had arrived at camp, Sergeant Wilson looked at her with something approaching respect. "What else didn't you tell us about your background, Martinez?" "You didn't ask, sir." The next few days brought a subtle shift in how Sarah was treated. She still faced skepticism and occasional mockery, but her shooting performance had earned her a measure of grudging respect. During combat training exercises, her tactical thinking impressed the instructors. She was quick, observant, and had an uncanny ability to spot enemy positions that others missed. Corporal Davis began spending extra time with her, teaching her advanced techniques that weren't part of the standard curriculum. "You've got natural talent," he told her during one evening session. "But talent only gets you so far. It's the discipline and continuous learning that separate the good from the great." Sarah absorbed everything he taught her like a sponge. She learned about wind compensation, range estimation, and the psychological aspects of precision shooting. Most importantly, she learned patience. "A good marksman thinks they're ready after they can hit a target," Davis explained as they worked on breathing techniques. "A great marksman knows they're ready when they can hit the target under any condition, at any distance, under pressure, when lives depend on it." 2 weeks into training, Sarah was cleaning her rifle in the armory when she overheard a conversation between 2 officers she didn't recognize. They were speaking in low voices, but her position behind a rack of equipment meant she could hear every word. "We need someone for the special assignment," one was saying. "Command is looking for unconventional candidates. The usual suspects aren't cutting it. What about the Martinez recruit? I heard about her shooting scores. A girl? Command will never approve it. Maybe they will if she's good enough. These are desperate times, and we need results, not politics." Sarah's heart began racing. Special assignment. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew it was her chance to prove herself beyond the standard training program. That night, she wrote a letter to her mother back in Montana. She couldn't say much about what was happening at the camp, but she tried to convey her determination and the progress she was making. "I know you worry about me being here," she wrote, "but I've never felt more like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Tommy would be proud. I can feel it." 3 days later, during an advanced combat exercise, Sarah's unit was tasked with locating and neutralizing mock enemy positions hidden throughout a dense forest training area. While her squad mates charged ahead, making noise and missing obvious signs, Sarah moved carefully, reading the terrain like the hunting grounds back home. She spotted the first enemy position from 300 yards away, a camouflage nest that her teammates had walked past twice. Using hand signals she had learned from Corporal Davis, she directed her squad to a flanking position that allowed them to complete their objective without casualties. The second position was trickier. Hidden on a hill overlooking the main approach route, it commanded a view of the entire training area. Sarah studied it for nearly 10 minutes, noting the sight lines, the cover options, and the likely escape routes. "Martinez, what's the holdup?" Sergeant Wilson's voice crackled through her radio. "Permission to attempt a long-range approach, sir." "Negative. Follow the standard assault protocol." Sarah bit back her frustration. The standard approach would work, but it would result in heavy, simulated casualties. She knew there was a better way, a way that would neutralize the threat without risk to her team. Against orders, Sarah broke from her squad and began a careful approach through a ravine that would bring her to within 200 yards of the enemy position. She moved like her father had taught her during hunting season, placing each step carefully, using the natural cover to mask her approach. When she reached her chosen position, Sarah settled into a shooting stance and took careful aim at the enemy position. The exercise ammunition would leave a bright mark on anyone it hit, clearly showing a successful engagement. Her shot was perfect. The enemy position was neutralized without the opposing force even knowing where the attack had come from. "What the hell just happened?" came the confused voice of the exercise controller over the radio. Sarah keyed her radio. "Enemy position neutralized. This is Martinez, requesting permission to rejoin my squad." The silence that followed stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, Sergeant Wilson's voice came back, tight with controlled emotion. "Martinez, report to the command post immediately. And bring your gear." As Sarah packed her equipment, she wondered if she had just earned herself a court-martial for disobeying orders. But deep down, she knew she had done the right thing. She had shown them what she was truly capable of. What she didn't know was that the entire exercise had been observed by a visiting officer who had been specifically looking for recruits with unusual potential. General Harrison had spent 40 years in the military, and he had never seen anything quite like what he had just witnessed. Sarah stood at attention outside the command post, her rifle secured, and her uniform as crisp as she could manage after the morning's exercise. Through the thin walls, she could hear muffled voices engaged in what sounded like an intense discussion. Her stomach churned with uncertainty about what awaited her inside. "Martinez, report." Sergeant Wilson's voice called from within. She entered the building and immediately noticed there were more people present than she had expected. Sergeant Wilson stood behind a desk, but beside him were two officers she had never seen before. One was a colonel with silver hair and stern features. The other was a general whose uniform bore more decorations than Sarah had ever seen in one place. "Private Martinez," the general said, his voice calm but commanding, "I understand you took some initiative during today's exercise." "Yes, sir. I apologize for disobeying the direct orders, sir." General Harrison studied her for a long moment. "Tell me about the shot you made." Sarah described the approach she had taken, the position she had identified, and the tactical reasoning behind her decision. As she spoke, she noticed the general's expression change from neutral interest to something approaching fascination. "What's your background with firearms, Private?" the colonel asked. "Hunting and target shooting since childhood, sir. My father ran a farm in Montana, and accurate shooting was necessary for both hunting and predator control." "Show me your hands," General Harrison said unexpectedly. Sarah extended her hands, palms down. The general examined them carefully, noting the calluses from years of farm work and rifle handling, the steady way she held them despite the stress of the situation. "Colonel Bradley," the general said to his companion, "would you mind retrieving the special rifle from my vehicle?" Sarah's heart began to race. Special rifle. She watched as Colonel Bradley left the command post and returned minutes later carrying a case she had never seen before. When he opened it, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Inside was the most beautiful rifle she had ever seen. It was clearly military issue, but modified beyond anything in the standard arsenal. The scope was massive and obviously precision-crafted. The stock had been customized for perfect fit and balance. Every component seemed designed for a single purpose: absolute accuracy at extreme range. "This is a prototype," General Harrison explained. "We've been testing various designs for specialized long-range operations. Very few people have even seen one of these, and fewer still have been qualified to use them." Sarah stared at the weapon, understanding that she was looking at exactly what she had requested on her first day of training. The irony was not lost on her. "I'm told you requested a sniper rifle when you first arrived," the general continued. "Your instructors found this amusing." "Yes, sir. They did. I don't find it amusing. I find it interesting. What made you think you were qualified for such a specialized weapon?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. "I wasn't qualified, sir, but I believed I could become qualified. I knew I had the foundational skills, and I was willing to do whatever training was necessary." General Harrison nodded slowly. "Your shooting scores are remarkable. Your tactical thinking during exercises shows real promise. But there's something else I need to know about you, Private Martinez." He moved closer to her, his eyes studying her face intently. "How do you handle pressure?" "Real pressure, not training exercises." Sarah told him about the time she had been alone on the farm when a pack of wolves had threatened their livestock. She had been only 14, armed with her father's rifle, responsible for protecting animals worth more than her family's annual income. She had made 7 shots in near darkness, each one counting, each one necessary. "No backup," the general said. "No second chances." "No, sir. Just me and the rifle." "What did you feel during those moments?" Sarah considered the question. "Calm, sir. Like everything slowed down and became very clear. Like the rifle and I were the same thing." General Harrison exchanged a look with Colonel Bradley that Sarah couldn't interpret. There was something significant in that glance, some communication she wasn't privy to. "Private Martinez," the general said finally, "I'm going to offer you an opportunity. It will be dangerous, it will be difficult, and it will require you to exceed every limit you think you have. You'll be separated from your current unit and placed in a specialized training program that most people don't survive." Sarah's pulse quickened. "What kind of training, sir?" "The kind that turns exceptional marksmen into something much more rare. The kind that creates soldiers capable of missions that can change the course of battles from a single well-placed shot." The room fell silent. Sarah understood that her answer would determine the entire direction of her military career, possibly her entire life. "Sir," she said clearly, "I came here to serve my country to the best of my ability. If you believe I can contribute more in this specialized role, then I accept." General Harrison smiled for the first time since she had entered the room. "I was hoping you'd say that. Colonel Bradley will escort you to the new training facility. You leave tonight." "Tonight, sir. Time is not a luxury we have, Private. The war won't wait for us to complete perfect training cycles. We need capable people in the field as soon as possible." Sarah was dismissed to pack her gear, her mind reeling from the rapid turn of events. As she gathered her belongings, Corporal Davis appeared in the barracks doorway. "Heard you're moving on," he said with a mix of pride and concern in his voice. "I guess word travels fast around here." "Word about you has been traveling for weeks, Martinez. You just didn't know it." He handed her a small wrapped package. "Something for your new assignment." Inside was a leather-bound notebook filled with detailed notes about advanced marksmanship techniques, wind calculations, and tactical observations. Davis had written it himself, compiled from years of combat experience. "Your real education is just beginning," he told her. "Remember what I taught you about patience, and discipline. Where you're going, those qualities matter more than natural talent. That evening, as Sarah climbed into the military transport that would take her to her new training facility, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. 3 weeks ago, she had been a laughingstock for requesting a sniper rifle. Now she was being handed the chance to train with weapons most soldiers would never even see. The transport pulled away from the camp, carrying her toward an uncertain future. Sarah didn't know what awaited her at the specialized facility, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the darkness outside her window, the landscape rolled past like the Montana hills of her childhood. Somewhere out there, her country was at war, and she was finally going to have the chance to make the contribution she had always known she was capable of making. The rifle case rested beside her on the seat, a promise of the specialized training to come. Soon, she would learn what it truly meant to be a precision marksman in wartime. Soon, she would discover why General Harrison had looked at her with such intense interest. Soon, she would understand what he had meant when he whispered those 2 words to Colonel Bradley as she left the command post, Black Talon. The specialized training facility was hidden deep in the Virginia mountains, so secret that it didn't appear on any official military maps. Sarah's transport had traveled for hours through increasingly remote terrain before finally arriving at what looked like an abandoned logging camp. Only the presence of armed guards and sophisticated communication equipment revealed its true purpose. "Welcome to nowhere, Private Martinez," said Major Reynolds, the lean, weathered officer who met her at the entrance. "For the next 8 weeks, this place will be your entire world. You'll eat, sleep, and breathe marksmanship until you can make shots that most people would consider impossible." Sarah was assigned to a Spartan barracks room that contained only the essentials: a narrow bed, a footlocker, and a small desk. What struck her most was the silence. Unlike the bustling activity of regular training camps, this place operated with an almost cathedral-like quiet. Her first morning began before dawn with physical conditioning that made basic training look like a warm-up. She ran through mountain terrain carrying a full pack and rifle, learning to maintain her breathing and heart rate control even under extreme physical stress. "A sniper who can't control their body can't control their shot," explained Staff Sergeant Kim, her primary instructor. Kim was a compact woman with Asian features and eyes that missed nothing. "Your heart rate, your breathing, your muscle tension, everything affects your accuracy. We're going to teach you to master all of it." The weapons training was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. She worked with rifles that had been modified for extreme precision, each one calibrated for specific ranges and conditions. She learned about different types of ammunition, how weather affected ballistics, and how to calculate shots across distances that seemed impossible. "Forget everything you think you know about shooting," Kim told her during their 3rd day. "Farm hunting and target shooting taught you the basics. Now we're going to teach you to be a weapon." Sarah discovered that her natural talent, while impressive, was only the foundation for what she needed to become. She spent hours each day practicing breathing techniques, learning to slow her heart rate at will, and developing the patience to remain motionless in uncomfortable positions for extended periods. The psychological training was equally demanding. She learned to block out distractions, to focus with laser intensity while maintaining awareness of her surroundings. She practiced making life-or-death decisions in split seconds, understanding that in real combat, hesitation could mean failure of the mission and death for herself and others. What separates a good marksman from an exceptional one isn't just skill, Major Reynolds explained during one of their evening briefings. It's the ability to perform under pressure when everything depends on a single shot. It's about becoming someone who can change the outcome of a battle from a mile away. Weeks into her training, Sarah learned why the facility was so secretive. She wasn't just training to be a sniper. She was being prepared for a role that officially didn't exist in the American military, a deep-cover precision marksman capable of operating independently behind enemy lines. The missions you'll undertake require a level of skill and independence that goes beyond traditional military roles, Kim explained as they worked on advanced camouflage techniques. You'll be inserted into enemy territory with minimal support, tasked with objectives that could affect entire theater operations. Sarah began to understand the weight of what she was training for. Her shots wouldn't just be about hitting targets. They would be about disrupting enemy command structures, protecting Allied operations, and potentially saving hundreds of lives with a single, perfectly placed bullet. The technical aspects of her training expanded far beyond marksmanship. She learned advanced fieldcraft, how to survive in hostile territory for extended periods, basic medical training, and communication protocols for operating behind enemy lines. She studied enemy uniforms and equipment, learned to recognize high-value targets, and practiced extraction techniques. One evening, as Sarah cleaned her rifle after a particularly challenging day of long-range exercises, Major Reynolds approached her with a serious expression. "Martinez, I need to ask you something, and I need a completely honest answer. Are you absolutely certain you're prepared for what we're training you to do? What we're asking of you isn't just difficult. It's dangerous in ways that most soldiers never face." Sarah set down her cleaning rod and met his gaze directly. "Sir, I've been certain since the day I first requested a sniper rifle. Everything that's happened since then has only confirmed that this is what I'm meant to do. Even knowing that success in your missions might require you to take lives, that you might be operating alone in enemy territory with no backup, no support, and no guarantee of extraction. Sir, my brother died at Pearl Harbor. Every day this war continues, more brothers, sons, and fathers don't come home. If I can help end it sooner by doing what I'm trained to do, then yes, I'm prepared for whatever that requires." Reynolds studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you are. But there's something else you need to know about your training. Everything you've done so far has been preparation for a specific program. It's classified at the highest levels, and once you're briefed on it, there's no going back to regular military service." "What kind of program, sir?" "Operation Black Talon. It's a joint intelligence initiative designed to place highly skilled marksmen in strategic positions throughout the European theater. The targets you'll be assigned are individuals whose elimination could significantly impact enemy operations." Sarah felt a chill of understanding. Black Talon. The words General Harrison had whispered as she left the command post. This had been the plan from the beginning. "How many others are in this program?" she asked. "Fewer than you might think. The skill requirements eliminate most candidates before they even begin training. Of the 12 soldiers who started specialized training when you did, only 3 remain. You're one of them." That night, Sarah wrote another letter to her mother, carefully choosing words that wouldn't violate security protocols, but would convey her pride in her progress. "I'm doing well and learning more than I ever imagined possible," she wrote. "I think about Tommy every day, and I know he would be proud of how far I've come. I can't say much about what I'm doing, but I want you to know that I'm exactly where I need to be." As she sealed the letter, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a farm girl who could hit a target to a soldier being trained for missions that could change the course of the war, it seemed impossible, yet here she was. Tomorrow would bring the final phase of her training, and soon after that, her first real assignment. She thought about the prototype rifle that had been waiting for her, the advanced techniques she had mastered, and the responsibility that now rested on her shoulders. Sarah Martinez was no longer the recruit who had been laughed at for requesting a sniper rifle. She was becoming something much more rare and dangerous, a Black Talon operative trained to strike with lethal precision from the shadows of war. 6 months after Sarah Martinez had first stepped onto that dusty training ground, she found herself crouched in a bombed-out church bell tower outside the French village of Mortagne. The specialized rifle that had once seemed impossible to obtain now rested steady in her hands, its scope trained on a German command post 800 meters away. The mission had taken weeks of preparation. Intelligence indicated that Colonel Klaus Weber, a brilliant tactician responsible for coordinating German defensive positions along the Norman coast, would be visiting the command post to inspect fortifications. His elimination could disrupt enemy communications across an entire sector, potentially saving thousands of Allied lives during the upcoming offensive. Sarah had been inserted behind enemy lines 3 days earlier, moving carefully through the French countryside with the help of local resistance fighters who knew nothing about her true mission. To them, she was simply another Allied operative gathering intelligence. They had no idea that the slight young woman carrying a carefully concealed rifle case represented one of the most classified programs in the American military. Now, as dawn approached, Sarah prepared for the shot that would justify months of intensive training and validate General Harrison's faith in her abilities. She had studied Weber's photograph until she could recognize him instantly, learn his habits and preferred routes, and calculated every variable that could affect her mission. Through her scope, she watched German officers moving around the command post. Weber had not yet arrived, but intelligence suggested he would appear within the hour. Sarah controlled her breathing, settling into the meditative state that had become second nature during her training. The irony was not lost on her. Months ago, her fellow recruits had laughed at the idea of a small farm girl requesting a sniper rifle. Now that same rifle, in her expertly trained hands, was about to strike a blow against the enemy that could affect the entire course of the war. A convoy of German vehicles approached the command post. Sarah's heart rate remained steady as she identified the target vehicle and began tracking movement through the compound. Years of hunting with her father, combined with months of specialized training, had prepared her for this moment. Colonel Weber emerged from the second vehicle, exactly as intelligence had predicted. He was a tall man with graying hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. Sarah tracked him through her scope as he walked toward the command building, noting his pace and the protection provided by his escorts. She had a clear shot for approximately 15 seconds as Weber crossed the open courtyard. Sarah calculated wind speed, temperature, and the slight elevation difference between her position and the target. Everything she had learned coalesced into this single moment of absolute focus. The shot was perfect. Weber collapsed instantly, and the courtyard erupted into chaos as German soldiers sought cover and tried to identify the source of the attack. Sarah was already packing her equipment, following the extraction plan she had memorized down to the smallest detail. Moving like a ghost through the ruins of the village, Sarah made her way to the predetermined rendezvous point where resistance fighters waited with civilian clothes and false identity papers. Within 6 hours of taking the shot, she was on a train heading toward the Spanish border, looking like nothing more than a young French woman traveling to visit relatives. The mission's success exceeded all expectations. Weber's death created a command vacuum that German forces struggled to fill quickly enough to maintain their defensive coordination. When Allied forces launched their offensive 2 days later, they encountered resistance that was disorganized and poorly coordinated, resulting in a breakthrough that accelerated the liberation of France by weeks. Sarah learned of these results during her debriefing at a safe house in London. General Harrison was present for the meeting, and for the first time since she had met him, he showed genuine emotion. "Private Martinez," he said, "your mission was more successful than we dared hope." The intelligence indicates that Weber's elimination disrupted German defensive planning across 3 sectors. Preliminary estimates suggest your single shot may have saved over 2,000 Allied lives. Sarah sat quietly, processing the magnitude of what she had accomplished. The scared farm girl who had been mocked for her ambitious request had become exactly what she had claimed she could be, a soldier capable of changing the course of battles. "There's something else," General Harrison continued. "The success of Operation Black Talon has convinced Allied Command to expand the program. We're going to need experienced operatives to train the next generation of specialized marksmen. Sir, I'm offering you a choice, Martinez. You can continue field operations, or you can help us create more soldiers like yourself. Both roles are crucial to winning this war." Sarah thought about the decision carefully. She had proven herself in the field, but she also remembered Corporal Davis and the impact a good instructor could have on developing talent. "I like to train others, sir. If my experience can help create more Black Talon operatives, then that's how I can best serve. 6 weeks later, Sarah stood in front of a new group of recruits at the Virginia facility. Among them was a young man from Texas who reminded her of her brother, a woman from Oregon who had been a competitive shooter, and a former hunting guide from Alaska whose skills had caught the attention of military scouts. "Welcome to specialized training," she told them, her voice carrying the authority earned through successful missions. "Some of you may think you already know how to shoot. I'm here to teach you the difference between hitting a target and changing the course of history with a single, perfectly placed shot." As she began their first lesson, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The laughter and mockery she had faced seemed like a lifetime ago. The rifle that had once been an impossible dream was now an extension of her own will and skill. That evening, she wrote one final letter to her mother, finally able to share some details of her service. "I can't tell you everything about what I've been doing," she wrote, "but I can tell you that I've found my place in this war. I've been able to serve our country in ways I never imagined possible, and I know that Tommy would be proud of what his little sister has accomplished." Years later, when military historians studied the factors that contributed to Allied victory in Europe, they would note the importance of Operation Black Talon and the specialized marksmen who struck crucial targets behind enemy lines. Few would know the names of these operatives, and fewer still would know that the program had begun with a 19-year-old farm girl whose simple request for a sniper rifle had been met with laughter. But Sarah Martinez knew. Every time she watched a new group of recruits graduate from the specialized program, every time she received reports of successful missions conducted by soldiers she had trained, she remembered that moment when General Harrison had looked at her target scores and whispered those two words that would change her life forever. She had requested a rifle as an untested recruit. She had become Black Talon as a proven warrior. And in doing so, she had shown that sometimes the most unlikely people are capable of the most extraordinary things when given the chance to prove what they can accomplish. The war would end, the specialized programs would evolve, and Sarah Martinez would eventually retire with honors that most of the world would never know about. But her legacy would live on in every precision marksman who learned that skill, discipline, and unwavering determination could turn a single shot into a moment that changed history.